And welcome to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Stewart Willis. He's Managing Partner of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. Stewart, good morning.
How are you doing there?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Man, it's been a day. We're staying now, but I'm doing awesome.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, you've been so busy. I know your phone has been ringing off the hook. You've been booking consultations, and you're really enjoying the feedback that you're receiving from the show.
Yeah, absolutely. We're swamped with people that are interested in what we're talking about and having a good time.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Are you feeling that a lot of people perhaps they want to retire, but they're just not sure the proper steps to take?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is that people just don't know where they're going to be, right? financially, meaning are they going to be okay later on? And quite honestly, we see it in both directions. Some are over-prepared, and some are very under-prepared. And for the over-prepared people, those are the people that end up not actually enjoying retirement because they're so worried about the preparation. They don't know where they stand. They've saved all this money, but they may not actually be able to ever enjoy it because they're so worried about running out.
Sure.
That's why it's really important to have that complete, clear understanding of where they stand. And we do some really in-depth cash flow analysis to show them, right? I mean, sure. I had a conversation the other day with an 83-year-old man that basically was concerned. They weren't doing anything. They were staying at home, not just because of COVID, but because they were concerned about running out of money. He's got $1.5 million saved at 83. And I mean, how much would they have to spend, right? Like,
sure.
to be able to run out of money at that age. And sometimes people just need to see it on paper. They need to see that, hey, I'm going to be fine. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to retirement. I also have to have the other talks, right? I also have to say, hey, people that are going to retire at, 59 years old because they know they can get access to their 401ks with no, tax penalties. Sometimes I have to have that really hard conversation to say, you know what? If you do this, you are going to run out of money at 68 years old. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I had to have that conversation the other day. It's really important to really know where you stand.
Sure, absolutely. It has to provide peace of mind for people to know, because like you said, my curiosity is going to the gentleman that you were helping earlier that saved up all the money.
Yeah.
So when you told him, you're totally fine, go enjoy, what was on his bucket list? Was he waiting to take a trip to Hawaii, or did he want to climb a mountain? I mean, what was on his list,
well,
right?
I know for a fact that he wants to take his first vacation in years.
Okay.
And the concern is he just remarried a couple years ago at 83 years old.
Aww.
He wants to make sure his wife is taken care of for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
But also, after he's gone, we had to do an estate planning review for him to make sure that that everything was protected in the way that he wanted, where he would have his kids make sure that his wife was protected, and once she's gone, that the assets would, pass on to them.
Sure.
But it's important to have that structure. And once we had our attorneys to look at the estate planning structure and made a few minor adjustments, everything was fine.
Okay.
It's just about knowing that you have the map, right? It's kind of like driving down the street to the station. Like this morning, we were driving and the driver was, driving the right way. And he's like, man, maybe I should map this out because I don't, it's hard to get to. If you have it on a map or have it on your GPS, you're going to get there.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the important thing is, sometimes I'm so busy that when I'm driving, I end up taking the wrong exit, or you don't want to do that with retirement. You want to make sure that you have a plan, it's on paper, and you know when to turn right and left.
Yeah.
So
that would be kind of like Siri guiding you along the way.
Right? That's it. That's absolutely it.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
find myself using her when I know where I'm going. It's like,
right.
it's just,
hey, you know what? You just need a second opinion to make sure that thing is telling you where to go. Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Stewart, I want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between tactical and passive asset management. Can you explain to the viewing audience what that is exactly?
Well, we typically see passive investing, and by passive, what we mean is clients that have either done it themselves, they pick their own investments, kind of buy and hold, or even under a lot of brokerage houses, what we'll see is they pick a risk tolerance level for the client, and or the client's done a risk tolerance questionnaire, and let's just say they're a balanced portfolio, and they're in a 60-40 stock bond split.
Okay.
And oftentimes in these passive approaches, all they're doing is rebalancing quarterly to make sure that those numbers come back to, to square. So if, for example, we have some overperformance in one sector and underperformance over here, they re-equalize those.
Okay.
What the tactical approach is, which is most of our portfolios, is an example is one of our risk management algorithm portfolios that basically says there are 6 distinct stages in the economic cycle. In each of those stages, there are specific investments that do well or do better on average. Well, not always, but on average, right?
Okay.
And so they tactically move based on what they're expecting or what they see in the market, right? And some money managers believe in that, and some don't. That's why we have a very diverse approach to how we manage portfolios, because everybody's strategy is different. But tactical basically makes sure that they're preemptive. They make moves before changes happen, or sometimes they even react after the fact if they didn't see that signal coming, but at least they're reacting, right? Oftentimes, when you hear from your broker, hey, just hang in there, it'll come back, that means you're willing to tolerate loss and it's acceptable to you. The tactical approach says, hey, let's avoid that loss. So one of the approaches we use is designed around drawdown, designed around loss. And the biggest portfolio we use has a 10% drawdown limit, which means that it's designed to never exceed a 10% loss. Now, it's not guaranteed, but it's never exceeded that threshold. It's never breached. And so even during COVID, during the 30% drop, the monthly drawdown was, I think, 9.6% when most of the market was down 30. So it's really important to make sure that you understand what your strategy is. Are you tactical? Are you passive? And what are the risks of having each of those?
Absolutely, and I wish that everyone would manage that way, but they don't, because the benefit of having you as a fiduciary is that you are ethically bound to put your clients' needs first.
Absolutely, and by the way, the way that our company works, we are fee only. There's no sort of commissions for trading or any of that. So historically, a lot of clients are averse or opposed to advisors moving things because they're always like, well, why are they doing that? Is there a benefit to them? Are they receiving some sort of commissions for selling it to us? Well, we don't receive any of that benefit whatsoever, and there are no expenses in 99% of the transactions we do, with any of the management. So that whenever a trade is made, that it's done for your benefit as a client.
And that is such a blessing and a gift that you offer to your clients. Well, Stewart, we're about ready to open up the phone lines for the very first time this week. Can you tell the viewing audience what they can expect to receive by being one of your first 10 callers?
Yeah, so for the first 10 callers, what we'll do is we'll offer a complete portfolio analysis. In that analysis, what we can do is we can tell you whether you're in a passive or tactical approach. We'll also look at all the fees, all the internal expenses, and also what kind of risk you're taking and what kind of drawdown you can expect. And we use a couple resources inside that analysis to give us a really three-dimensional view into that analysis and into your portfolio. But if you call 1-833-652-7829, we'd be glad to do that analysis for you, and I will deliver the results personally to you.
Stewart, thank you so much. To the viewing audience at home, we do have to take a very short commercial break, but that number to call once again is 833-652-7829. We know you have a lot of questions about planning your perfect and stress-free retirement. Stewart has the answers for you, so please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What happens oftentimes is we'll run into clients or potential clients that have saved all this money, but they're 75, 80 years old. They've got this big pile of money, but they're not enjoying retirement because they're so worried about running out of money that they never actually get to enjoy their life's work. And so to me, it's really rewarding to be able to create a plan so that these people can have a great time in retirement, knowing that they're not going to run out, that they're going to be fine. I think it brings a smile to their face.
We get a lot of different people at a lot of different stages in their lives. And what we're able to do is, for some folks, it's able to tell them that you're on track. keep doing what you're doing, and 15 years from now, you'll be retired and enjoying life the way you want it to be. For some people, it's people coming in and they're 3 to 5 years away from retirement, and you're able to tell them that, you know what, 5 years, 3 years, tomorrow, you're ready to go.
We are a complete shop. We handle estate planning, taxes, financial planning. We do a really in-depth cash flow analysis that is way more detailed than you'll see in the market.
Everything all in one spot, with the left hand always knowing what the right hand's doing. Because it's not just about the investments, but how's that going to affect your taxes? It's not where are you going to be 5 years from now, 15 years from now. And it's that back and forth full view of what the clients, not only today, but tomorrow and their legacy down the road is going to be, that really sets us apart.
And welcome back to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Stewart Willis. He is Managing Partner of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. And Stewart, I love talking to you every week because I learn a lot through you when we're talking about planning for retirement. And I think one thing that's so important to talk about, maybe a little more in depth, if you will, is the need for proper estate planning. It's not something that people like to talk about a lot of times because it does put the end in mind, right? But isn't it so important to have that piece in place for maybe your children or grandchildren down the road as well?
It's absolutely essential.
Okay.
It's critical to make sure that everything you've worked for your whole life isn't locked up in some probate court, for months possibly. And, with COVID happening, a lot of courts are shut down or less productive than they once were. Mm-hmm. We're seeing, for example, death certificates that are taking extremely months in some cases to get. So mm-hmm. in some cases, people just are locked out of their assets or the heirs are, so they can't pay the bills. Things can get lost. It's a problem. So mm-hmm. it's super important to make sure that structure's in place. And that basic structure is generally a living trust. Mm-hmm. If you own a home and you have $100,000 or more of assets and you don't have a living trust, you're making a huge mistake. It's essential. And for our financial clients, it's one of those very strong recommendations that we make. We don't benefit from it. We've had the same relationship with the attorney that we've dealt with for 15 years. We do all of the administration of it in-house, but we've had the same attorney handle it at a big law firm down in Tempe for 15 years. Mm-hmm. But it's super essential to make sure from an estate planning perspective that you have those documents in place. Mm-hmm. One thought is, we'll have clients that come in and that already have a living trust. And what we'll see is that they put their IRA in their trust to go to their kids. And the first question I'll ask is, well, tell me about your kids. Are there issues there? Because sometimes it makes sense to have the beneficiary as a trust, usually not. But I'll say, hey, tell me about, Johnny. Is he your son? Is there an issue there? Are there any sort of drug issues or special needs or, No, what are you talking about? He's an attorney. He's fine. Well, then oftentimes when you put an IRA inside a trust, what happens is that it limits your beneficiary's options as to how they take it, right? So when you have an IRA payout to a trust, the tax implications could be just absolutely extreme. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to make sure you understand, that flexibility. Or then we will see clients that have a special needs son or daughter, or their kid has, drug issues, and they want to make sure they limit how those payouts go to those kids over time. Well, if that's in an IRA, it becomes really, really difficult. And so that's why from an estate planning perspective, we do start looking at Roth conversions, for example, to make sure that, when it's after-tax money, controlling it's easy. Mm-hmm. It's the pre-tax money that's really, really difficult. And it's really important to understand all the details about the client situation, to understand what's the right tool and what's the right combination of tools, right?
Sure.
So does it make sense to do Roth conversion? Does it make sense to have this special needs trust inside the trust? All of those factors are really important when planning out an estate to make sure that the people who you intend to receive it properly at the lowest cost. a trust is under $1,000 at our firm.
Okay.
And the reality is that the cost of probate is so exorbitant relative to that cost that it makes zero sense not to get that done. It's really, really important to get your estate planning done. If you, like I said, if you have a house and over $100,000 in assets, you know,
should have that in
well,
place. Yeah.
you know, our attorney generally will, you know, everything we do goes to the attorney, but he will definitely review the situation.
Yeah.
And if it's inappropriate for a client, he'll say, listen, this isn't the right thing, you know. But it's important to consult with an attorney to make sure you have the proper planning. Absolutely.
Sure. And again, Stewart, it goes back to that one component that makes everyone feel secure is that it's one-stop shopping with you. So you have pieces and parts that you put together so the puzzle makes sense, and you're providing incredible peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I kind of refer to ourselves as quarterbacks, you know, where we are. We, you know, from handling the money managers to the estate planning lawyers, the tax piece, all of those things, it makes sense to make sure you have somebody that sees every aspect of your estate so that they can properly plan. You know, I generally say, you know, to people that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, where, you know, the tax people don't generally communicate, for example, with the attorneys and vice versa, right? Nobody communicates well. And it's important that they do, right?
Yeah,
and that's what we
absolutely.
quarterback and handle really well at Asset Preservation.
So it's holistic, if you will.
Absolutely. And, you know, our main office is in the Sun City area, and we see tons of people from Sun City, Grand, Portobello, people that have done really well in life, saved a lot of money, but have no plan in place.
Yeah.
You know, we see the same thing out of our Scottsdale office.
Sure.
Where people have done this incredible job at saving money, but they don't have a plan.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's a tough thing. You know what? But for the last decade, everything's gone relatively well before COVID.
Sure.
And nobody's really thought about it. You know, hey, I'm making money. Who cares? We're fine. These other people that aren't doing well, I'm not going to pay an advisor or have some, you know, in our opinion, COVID has been a huge awakening to people to say, you know what if I get that? What if it affects me in a bad way compared to other people? What if the market crashes again? Are we prepared? And I think it's really important, and I think that's why we've been a lot busier than other firms, is because we're out there preaching that message that you need to have a plan.
Yeah.
Super important.
And to encompass all parts of retirement, because we've talked as well about how important it is to plan for your long-term care, your health care. That's something else people sometimes can fail to plan for.
Absolutely. You know, it's the clients that, you know, retire at 59 years old and don't think about the cost of health care.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, health care is kind of up in the air, but it's expensive between 59 and 65. I mean, we have a lot of clients that don't consider that, you know, before they come to us.
Yeah,
and it's really important to cash flow out all of those expenses for the rest of your life. It's important so that you know with a reasonable degree of certainty what the outcome of your financial situation is going to look like at every single stage of the remainder of your life.
Sure, and I've heard a lot of people say that they felt that maybe Medicare was going to take care of everything, but that's not the case.
No.
You need to have more on top of Medicare just to be sure.
Yeah, we have access to a great Medicare specialist in the house that just does a phenomenal job. And you know, when you turn 65, you're going to get about 10,000 pieces of mail from every Medicare agent on the planet, and there's a lot of noise out there. And I think it's important to have people that you can rely on that have really good access to that information.
Absolutely, and again, I can't say it enough, but it is a one-stop shop where you're providing information and very important peace of mind for people that are approaching their retirement years.
Absolutely, yeah, no, it's important for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Stewart, we're about ready to open up the phone lines another time for your show. Can you tell the viewing audience what they can expect to receive by being one of your callers today?
Sure. So for the first 10 callers, what we're going to offer is a complimentary portfolio review. In that portfolio review, we're going to take a look at all the risks that you're taking, the fees that you're paying. Do they make sense? Does the risk-reward scenario make sense for you? What we can also take a look at is we can have our tax people look at your taxes to see if you're overpaying in taxes. Are there deductions that you're missing out on? Can we be more efficient from a planning perspective? But for the first 10 callers, we'd love to do that analysis. And I will deliver the results of the portfolio analysis personally.
Stewart, that's awesome. Thank you so much. To the viewing audience at home, that number to call once again is 833-652-7829. When we come back from our commercial break, we're going to have more questions and answers for Stewart about planning your perfect retirement. So please stay tuned.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
And welcome back to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Stewart Willis. He is Managing Partner of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. Stewart, another amazing show. But I have to ask you a question because a lot of buzzword right now around annuities. So I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about annuities and what your thoughts are. Are they good? Are they bad? Why is there negative stereotypes around annuities? What are your thoughts on them? Because I think there's a lot of different directions that people are taking and questions around annuities right now.
So it's interesting because you have to remember the stuff that you hear in the media is all marketing, right? If you Google search annuities, you'll see, one of the biggest advisors in the country that will say, I'd rather die and go to hell than buy an annuity. Well, it's because he sells stock management systems himself. On the other hand, you'll see people saying, hey, you've got to buy this annuity, because you're guaranteed 10% or 7%, income or whatever for the rest of your life. And just remember, oftentimes those guarantees come with, nuance, and you need to understand what those mean. So oftentimes when it comes to, annuities, people advertise a rate, 7%, 10%. I would just ask you to ask yourself this question. Okay. Today, the Treasury yield is yielding about a little over 0.5%. So we're at the lowest interest rate environment the world has ever seen, or at least the US has ever seen. How the heck are you going to make 7% guaranteed when the 10-year Treasury is paying 0.5%, right? Because their underlying investments are bonds. If they're guaranteeing you 7 or 10, there's got to be a catch. And what the catch is that most people don't think about is they're not guaranteed 7% on the value of your account. It's on this secondary income account that isn't always really a value to people, because that's the growth rate on that. Oftentimes, what they'll do is they'll say it grows for 7% for the next 10 years, and then you can take out 5% of that for the rest of your life. Now, if somebody is 65 years old and they buy something for income purposes, well, a 5% payout, remember, they're 65, they can take income 10 years later, they're 75. If it's a 5% payout, you're gonna have to be 85 just to get your money back. Sure. And so the question is, does it really make sense? Well, it sounds good on a radio ad or on a email blast, but it doesn't always work out. There's different kinds of annuities. There's variable, there's fixed, there's indexed. Variable annuities are really, really expensive in general. I just saw one the other day that was actually really good for the first time, but most of them aren't. And so you may have, as a client, you may have that really good one, but it's really important to understand which one you have and how many fees you're paying. When it comes to variable annuities, we oftentimes see up to 4% in fees, right? You'll see an admin fee, you'll see a mortality and expense fee, you'll see fund fees, and then the income rider fee, and then you end up paying 3-4% in fees. And just think about this, from 2000 to 2012, the S&P 500 made nothing. It took 12 years for the S&P to get back. If you're paying a 4% fee on a variable annuity and the market, and you're in an S&P fund, you have lost 48% over 12 years. And I didn't compound that number because I can't do the math in my brain here, but you've got half the money 12 years later.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to think about the impact of those fees. Does it really make sense? And here's the good news. There are some really good annuities, but they're not for everybody. You have to make sure that it is. So for clients that want to have a portion of their money in safe, fixed investments, we like to use the stripped down versions of them if it's even appropriate for a client, to make sure that they're not paying any of those excessive fees. It's really important to understand what you have. And I think there's a lot of confusion out there.
I would agree with that. I think a lot of times, like we've mentioned in the past, if they have been working with another advisor, perhaps, they were just told that they should get something, but they don't really know why. So until they come in and sit with you to really take a look at their portfolio comprehensively, I'm sure there's a lot of confusion out there. It makes total sense, Stewart.
Yeah, you just have to make sure if you're paying for a feature, understand what you're paying for, right? If you're paying for some big death benefit, maybe it makes sense. I had a client the other day that bought one of them with a massive death benefit, but she's a 28-year-old teacher that has no kids. Well, she doesn't care about passing assets to anybody at this point, right?
Sure.
She needs to make sure that she's got her own retirement savings set up. And so oftentimes people are paying these exorbitant fees for a benefit that doesn't even apply to them. And you just want to make sure that if you're paying those, it's appropriate. Now, there are some, like I said, there was some really good ones out there, good products out there. Generally, on the annuities, and I differ from a lot of people. There are people locally that spend tons of money advertising lifetime income and so forth. I tend to come from the position that I'm here to grow the wealth, not to guarantee income. And we have the math, that supports our position.
Absolutely. And Stewart, I love how you mentioned that you were talking with a 28-year-old, because that tells the viewing audience that you're able to help anyone, no matter what stage of life that they're in.
Absolutely.
And
if they're serious about retirement, I'm really, I'm there to help.
Absolutely. And I love that fact, because then people come in, they sit with you, and they're saying such positive things. I love hearing the feedback. They feel like you're really giving them one-on-one time. So Stewart, we only have about 30 seconds left of the show. Can you tell the viewing audience what they can expect to receive one final time?
Since we're talking about annuities, I think it's really important to make sure you understand what you have. We will do a complete annuity analysis if you have them, and a portfolio analysis to show you all of the risks and expenses that you're paying. We'd be glad to help. You just call 833-652-7829.
Stewart, thank you so much. To the viewing audience at home, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you back here next week. Take care.